This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome in, Paul Catalina, Garrett Ross today on a Monday. What a crazy weekend in college football. It started on Friday night with something that hasn't happened ever. I'll just wear it right now. I lost a bet to Jack. Florida State lost to Duke in a game they really could have won. I mean, they can't catch. I'm at rock bottom. So, two whiskeys.
You're addressing it.
Look, that was a 2 whiskey and 2 gummy game.
Woo!
I'll just tell you. When I got here on Saturday morning to the pregame show, I had erased it from my memory. Yeah. Until you said, hey, that offensive line sucks. I was like, oh, man.
Dude, that's what – okay, so I'm sitting there watching the game, and I know that they've been bad all year long. And I know DJU coming over was not the best thrower, and there were better options out there that they could have evaluated. But after seeing that, and I'm just looking at this offensive line, and they can't block anybody, I'm like, man, how much of this was really on DJ? Like, I know he's not that great, but it seems like whoever you put back there behind that offensive line, they're screwed. Regardless, because they can't block anybody, man.
No, they can't block. They can't catch. They can't throw. I mean, what is life? So that one started on Friday night, but the bigger one on Friday night was BYU, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State finally looked like they were themselves for a minute, and then BYU was like, we're sorry we let you experience the joy of the past.
Yeah.
Done. BYU, Iowa State, very similar games against very similar opponents in West Virginia and Oklahoma State where I'm sorry, not West Virginia and Oklahoma State, UCF and Oklahoma State. West Virginia was last week for Iowa State, but West Virginia got throttled by Kansas State, so that's another thing for another segment. But like those games, I think the score was essentially the same too, right? It was 38-35 in both of them. And so both of them won, last score of the game. Iowa State game was so exciting. It was so great, unless you're a UCF fan. But UCF in control most of that game, and then they let Iowa State hang around and hang around and hang around. It reminded me a lot of that Baylor game they lost last year where you make enough mistakes or just don't get the stops you need to, and a team who probably should have lost the game is out of it. Oklahoma State, same thing. Let them hang around and hang around and hang around and couldn't put them away, and then the better team wins out in those. Auburn and Mizzou was like that, although I don't think Mizzou's really all that to write home about. I do think it shows where Mizzou is compared to where Auburn is right now. And so you have those where this week was not like the crazy week of upsets so much as it just was the week of this kind of shows you where you are.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a lot about Texas and Georgia. There's so much that happened in that game. But I do think that Texas and Georgia, that fits into where that is. This is where you are right now. Nothing is permanent, but now you're really starting to see who the contenders and who the pretenders really are.
No, you are. And I think kind of when you're talking about that UCF game and against Iowa State, it reminded me a lot of last year when they went to Norman, where you went into a hostile environment where nobody really expected you to do anything, and you took it to the limit, but you just weren't able to find a way to win. I came away really impressed with Rocco Beck once again, like when it was his time to shine and when Iowa State needed it, he put the team on his back and literally carried them into the end zone for that final touchdown there that put them over the top. But I was really impressed by them. I think that right now, if you look at the Big 12, there's no doubt it's BYU and Iowa State that have kind of separated themselves. I think Kansas State, while they stumbled, they're kind of finding their way back in that mix as well. But, yeah, I mean, that was a really gutsy performance by Iowa State there. And I did not expect Oklahoma State to go into Provo and compete, honestly.
No, I didn't either.
You hear about that environment. We heard Gundy talk about earlier in the week, or there was talk about how he never coached there in that environment. And I think they handled it well. I think Garrett Rangel looked comfortable at times. It really sucks that how he got injured on that, and now he's done, and you got to rely on Alan Bowman. But I think you could realistically say that, and you could take what it is, but if Rangel doesn't get hurt, I think that's one the Pokes probably could win. Ollie Gordon showed up a little bit, but hats off, man. BYU and Iowa State keep finding ways to win, and it's really impressive to see what they're doing this season with, especially more so from a BYU perspective, where nobody really gave them a chance at all. Like, we knew Iowa State was going to be in the mix, like with all the talent they were bringing back. But what Kalani's got that team doing up there in Provo is impressive.
Yeah, no, I'm full, like, you know, this Iowa State BYU in the Big 12 championship.
Oh, that's freaking awesome.
For TV networks is probably the antithesis of Yankees-Dodgers World Series, where, like, I'm sure Rob Manfred's, like, you know, like putting nipple clamps on and stuff. He's so excited about that crap. My gosh. Oh, man. You know what's really going to hurt, especially if the Dodgers win and Mookie Betts is a huge part of that for me? I'm just going to cry. Like, I'm actually going over the Yankees. I'm actually going to cry. I'm just going to be like, he could be the like World Series MVP. Mookie Betts had 5 home runs in the series and outplayed even Ohtani and made great defensive plays. Congratulations, Dodgers. Mm-hmm. Like that's gonna happen. That's exactly what's gonna happen. But just continuing on down the tunnel of this week. I mean, there weren't a lot of like really bad games. Again, like we're starting to get into that. And while we're kind of hovering in the Big 12, I'll just say the most shocked I was is that Baylor had 59 points in them. Yeah. I mean, that is – it felt like all the touchdowns they've left on the board the last, like, year just all came out in the second half of that game. Like, everything they've left on the board, they poured into Lubbock. And that's 2 wins in a row in Lubbock. And they've dominated that series the last decade, really, which is really surprising to me. I thought that the way that Tech was playing, but bye week, confidence, I don't know what it is, but – and now you look at Baylor's schedule down the rest of the way.
Dude, they can legitimately win out. They have a good shot of winning out.
I mean, they've got Oklahoma State this week, who's in a free fall. They have TCU who's struggling. They've got West Virginia, who's struggling. They've got Houston, who's struggling.
And Kansas, who's struggling. Like their schedule is the dregs, and like they're in that. Like the lower part of the conference that's all like, what is happening to us is that group now. Mm-hmm. So who comes out of that group feeling good about themselves? Who comes out feeling bad? Baylor's got a great shot of doing that. And, I mean, had they been able to hang on against Colorado and been able to finish against Iowa State, like you're looking at a different thing. And maybe that woke them up. Maybe this is like that 2000 and what was it, 12 year. Mm-hmm. Before they won back-to-back, where they went up, got thumped by Iowa State, looked about as bad as you could, and then rallied. You know, and again, the schedule works out for them. You know, they're not going to the playoff with 4 losses or anything like that. But look, if you can go now like 4-2 down the stretch, like you know you're 6-6 and doing well. So I was looking this morning for some content for the article tomorrow, in the web article I do every Tuesday, and I come across Brett McMurphy's article on the Action Network HQ where he does like his bowl projections, and he has right now Baylor projected, I believe it to go play Iowa in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl out in Phoenix. Yeah. So I mean that's legit. They legitimately can. I was really impressed with Sawyer Robertson. I think going back home, having that homecoming game. Growing up a Tech fan, wanting to play for Mike Leach, having that opportunity before he passed and coming over to Baylor, he really took advantage of it. That was really, really awesome to see him own the moment. I think having Bryson Washington back is definitely a game changer for that rushing attack because we've seen flashes, but he's really been the only consistent running back they've had. I still don't know what's going on with Richard Reese. He just hasn't been the same since he didn't get much playing time last year. That's kind of weird to see, but I think there's still plenty of room to work there. The defense didn't like put up gaudy numbers by any means. Baron Morton still threw for 3 touchdowns and like almost 300 yards. So there's still some work to be done there. But I was really impressed to see the offense come out and click. We've been waiting, right? We've seen Baylor have flashes, but they finally put it all together. I just need to see them do it consistently. Now you have an opportunity where you get to come home. You got 3 home games to finish out the stretch. You got a blackout coming up with TCU. You have homecoming this week. Can you come and bring that type of intensity to McLean Stadium and actually win in front of your home crowd? Because they've been really disappointing at home over the past couple of years. But, man, I like where they're at right now. I think getting healthy is key for them. There's still a lot of room to grow, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see them reel off about 4 or 5 wins and make a bowl.
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy to say.
I mean, they looked rudderless, and they could go out this week against Oklahoma State and be back to who they were. It could be just like the UCF game last year all over again, where they followed that up with nothing a year ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You got to take care of it, though.
Yeah.
Now you've got to.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to use this momentum that they have, and this is a great opportunity to beat somebody at home who people have heard of.
Right.
Like beating Oklahoma State would be a huge, huge deal for them, even though they're both 3-4. Like, this is the bowl. Like, it really is. And that's what their schedule is the rest of the way, is teams that are in that boat. Like, they had to make it through this first part, and they could have made it through at least a game better. They could be 4-3 right now, at least, as opposed to 3-4, if not maybe even one game better than that. But here they are. The team finally looked confident. Like, that's what I always thought before, was the minute that they lost momentum, they just never got it back. Or when they were kind of like in the Iowa State game, they were kind of chasing it neck and neck. Same with Colorado. You're kind of chasing it neck and neck. And then because that team was better than you, they pulled it out, right? Like, they were chasing the momentum neck and neck. It wasn't something, but against Tech, second half, Taj Brooks comes out, scores a touchdown. I know I felt this way. I'm sure you felt this way. It was like,
here we go.
Well, there's where it starts again. They got the good first half. They're not going to have a good second half.
Yeah.
And no, they put 4 quarters together for the first time this year. So
no, they did. I also think it was good to see Steve Linton go out and get his kind of revenge game. Like, he balled out in Lubbock, and that was kind of cool to see as well.
Yeah, he was off sides a few times.
Everywhere. But it happened.
He was a little too excited.
It happened.
Yeah, he did have that revenge game. All right. I'm trying to see how long we can delay, like, build up the Texas and Georgia game. We'll talk about it in the middle segment, because I want to make sure we get to some of the other things that happened. Indiana just destroyed Nebraska.
How
Smokey kind of saw that coming. I didn't. Like, I thought it'd be a much better game, but they just got rolling down the hill, and it was unstoppable.
Kirk Cignetti's phenomenal coach, and I love the quote that was floating around about him, like, "Google me, I win." Like, that was hilarious to me, and I think they're really fun to watch. They're not like, it's not a fluke. Like, they are legit. It sucks that Curtis Rourke got hurt, and now he's kind of going to be out. They have a big game coming up this week, which I think they could still win without him. But I'm interested to see how that offense changes with him not at the helm, because and that would be unfortunate if that was the case. Then that derailed something, because they are building something special up there in Indiana.
Yeah, and now look, I think I'm not gonna predict an upset at Iowa State this week for Nebraska, but I do think that UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, all very winnable games for that team. And if they lost this week and then won out, I wouldn't be shocked. Or if they lost this week and then finish 7-5, 8-4, like, they look like a 7-5 and 8-4 team to me.
I saw that they're 0-26 against ranked teams. It's like 26. Like, how the hell does that happen for a program like Nebraska?
I don't know. Another week, another Miami fast and loose win, and another assist from the ACC officials in Charlotte. Do you think that they got the fumble forward pass call right, Garrett?
I think I can see it going either way. To me, Cam Ward's arm was coming forward.
Well,
it was coming forward.
It was right in that spot of.
The way they called it a touchdown on the field to go back, I didn't know that there was going to be enough evidence to overturn that. That was the key part. But I do believe it was a pass.
Yeah, and look, when you're a team that's that good and Team of Destiny now, their defense is not anything really all that special as we've seen. They've got playmakers. They've got guys who can step up in it, but that offense it's the best in the country right now. Miami's got the best offense in the country.
I think those two balls that Xavier Restrepo missed, like, he almost came away with 2 top 10 SportsCenter top 10 catches.
Well, he had a great play.
So good, man.
Right before the half that set up. They were, or in the third quarter. Restrepo's legit.
He is.
He is legit.
He reminds me a lot of Ricky Pearsall for Florida.
Yeah.
Like, they have a lot of similarities, what they can do, and like the down and distance when they're used and stuff. They have a lot of similarities to me.
Yeah. Ricky Pearsall back this week, actually against the Chiefs played. So, shook off a bullet wound. So good for Ricky Pearsall. Okay, I'm going to say this about Alabama and Tennessee, and I think people would buy this from me on Alabama. I'm going to also say it about Tennessee. I don't think either of them are really all that great.
No, I told y'all. I texted y'all that text last week saying Bama wasn't a top 10 team.
No. I don't think they're the top 15 team.
I don't think they are either.
They're in the top 15
and it brings
right
me
now because
so
of
much
Bama.
joy.
Anybody else has the last stretch that they have, and
they're out of the poll.
Well, they're like 20, like Michigan. They're like 24th,
yeah.
right? And then Michigan fell out this week because they do not have a quarterback.
No.
But Alabama, like if they weren't Alabama,
yeah, they'd be gone.
Yeah, they'd be out of the poll.
Jalen Milroe's good. Ryan Williams is good, but like I don't know. I thought Milroe would take a step forward in the system, just kind of seeing what DeBoer has been able to do with quarterbacks in the past, but that just hasn't been. And I don't know if it's necessarily the case. It's just like there's a lot on him. He's asked to really carry that team to victories, and they just don't have it. They don't have the depth in the trenches.
You know what I'll tell you that they don't have, which I'm surprised, and they didn't really have it last year. They had a little bit more than they do now, but where's the badass running back at Alabama?
He's gone. He's not there.
They haven't really had that in a couple years. They were better with it last year, but Jam Miller hasn't really, ripped it up for them. They rely too much on Milroe, which is not something they ever had to do in the past. And on the Tennessee side, I think Nico Amaliava is going to be fantastic. Like, there's going to be a year where we're like, holy crap, look at this guy. Mm-hmm. But right now,
he's a freshman.
It looks like they've kind of figured him out a little bit.
Yeah, and he took a nasty shot too. Like that shot where I thought he messed his back up pretty bad. I'm just glad to see him get back out there on the field. But no, I mean, I think people have kind of figured out how to attack him. He's going to get better and he's going to progress. But I think the hype around him and everything is more so focused on that check and people knowing what he's getting made. And when you watch him play, it's like, well, is he living up to it? Which is kind of unfair, but at the same time, I understand it. But I think Tennessee they're good, but they're not what I think. He's not on the par of what Hendon Hooker was. No. And I think that's what people are kind of adjusting to.
And he might surpass
Hooker. But right now, they're trying to – it's an adjustment period.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and another thing, don't storm the damn field for beating that Bama team.
Well, you just beat them last year.
Yeah, like why are we doing this?
Or 2 years ago. The last time you were there, you just did it.
That's not a field storming situation. No. I think fans need to, I don't know if it's a viral moment with the kids or not. That's not when you storm the field. That was a pathetic team.
No, you beat a championship caliber Bama team a couple years ago.
Right. That was, and you earned it.
You earned it. Hadn't played them that well in a long time and earned it. Kick at the end of the game, all that stuff. That is that. This was not that.
No, like Vandy, yes.
You just cheapened that moment.
Right.
If you stormed the field in 22 and then did again in 24, you got to feel like, eh.
Yeah.
Like if you're one of the people who are in both of those field storming, you'd be like,
it shouldn't feel the same.
Yeah, no. I think you need to save your field stormings for the special moments, or you cheapen them.
Right.
Look, Vanderbilt shouldn't rush the field again for a while.
No.
And hopefully those kids are smart enough to do so at a school like Vanderbilt. Just another couple quick observations. I think A&M LSU going to be a really great game this week.
Yes.
Both those teams are playing really well. A&M did not dominate Mississippi State like I think maybe the fans wanted them to, but they never lost control of the game. Mm-hmm. And that is, I don't think that they've had control of games regularly under any of the previous 4 head coaches. Like every time you watched A&M, it was, all right, I mean, they've got some good players. Let's see what happens. And then you play Big 12, SEC, whatever. It was when they play a good team, it's just any LSU game was that they're playing oh, hey, look, they pulled that out. Or, LSU's team full of dogs just ate them up. But they look now, Mike Elko's got them where they control the pace of the game. Mm-hmm. And they and Notre Dame were in a ridiculous tug of war. And then since then, that, I wouldn't even call that it wasn't a great game for either team. It was just that was 2 defensive geniuses locking horns. And then I like what I've seen from Mike Elko and A&M. They are, again, they're very fundamental. There's not a lot of flash there, but they couldn't live that life. That was not them.
No.
You know, that they were pretending to be flashy. Like you can be wealthy and not flashy. You can be the Yellowstone of teams. Like be the Yellowstone of teams. Do that. That's what you need to be. You know, you're a truck, be a truck.
Right.
Yeah. Don't walk around wanting to be a Lamborghini. You're a truck. That's who you are. And if you are the best truck that you can be, you can win a lot. You know, that's why, look, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, all these schools, those are Ferraris and Lamborghinis and you know, high performance cars, right? They know how to do that. They know how to do this. A&M, teams like that are not. They're trucks. But you can win being a truck. But you have to accept the fact that you're a truck.
Yep.
You know, so that's what they have to do. And that's like I feel like I told them that they were like a 6-year-old. Like, buddy, it's cool to be a truck. Some people are trucks. Some people are Honda Civics. Some people are Winnebagos.
Stay in your lane.
You just have to figure out who you are and embrace it. And whoever you are is wonderful. Now, come on, let's get some ice cream, son.
Nice pep talk.
Thanks, Dad.
Insane.
The more you know. That's what that was right there. When we come back, we've built it up long enough. Texas and Georgia, that's the game we're going to talk about in this segment. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, Paul Catalina, Garrett Ross. I can tell you, so I've been using YouTube TV, and it's maybe a drug that I was maybe not ready for,
Right.
but is now in my system. Garrett, you and I last year several times would put games on all of the available screens here and watch them. And that was one thing. But when I can go from quad to quad to quad, my football watching is at the highest it's ever been. And I feel like it's because I don't go to a lot of the Baylor games anymore. Like I kind of pick and choose, and because I want to watch more games. I think that since we're doing a national show, I need to watch more games. I feel like I'm more informed when I watch games as opposed to watching people talk about those games, at least on Saturdays. So I like to see as much as I can so I can describe what my real opinions are about that and not, just look at stats and numbers and a couple of highlights. If I can see a good stretch of any game, then I can tell you, yeah, man, that offensive line at LSU has really stepped up in the last 3 weeks. Or, here's why USC keeps losing. Those kind of things. Like you can just kind of see it and get the rhythm of the game. I didn't watch all of UCF and Iowa State. I was at Brew at the Zoo, which I missed a good chunk of Texas and Georgia too, a good a quarter and a half of it. But I saw the pertinent parts of the game. And so Brew at the Zoo, by the way, Cameron Park Zoo is a really fun thing. I think we should all go next year together where you buy a ticket and then you just walk around the zoo and you're like, hey, there's an elephant. And then you get a beer and then you try 12 different beers. And then after a while, I'm just talking to a giraffe about how he feels about life. I think that was good.
Sounds like a good time.
And then Lenny, come here. I don't think you're happy here. I get it. You want to be on the plains. But look, you and I are we're in our situations. We got to make the most of it. Looks like you got a girlfriend. She's nice. She cares about you. I got a wife who loves me. Let's just live in our truth, Lenny. Man, I love your neck. That's what happens after a bunch of them. So, so I've watched so many games. I've watched tons this year, more than I ever have. And it makes me hard. Like, when I do get to go to a game, like when I go, like I feel
you're distracted.
I'm like, oh man, where are the other three? Like I'm watching this like when I was at SMU a couple weeks ago. I'm like, okay, this is fine. Can you put 3 more over here for me?
Right.
Mostly because I also don't want to see what's going on over here anymore. I've seen enough.
You need a distraction.
Like, put 3 other games up. Like, can we just take one of these jumbotrons and throw up a quad up here just so we can all see what's going on? Especially us from Tallahassee here. We need
Oklahoma could have used that the other day.
Exactly. Can we just like we don't need like this one can be for the replays and stuff.
Yeah. For
the people who are still invested in this blowout. We would like to watch this one. And if you could put like Texas and Georgia up here, if you can put, Iowa State and UCF and all that, like that's I'd like to Alabama and Tennessee put that in that corner,
I have a distraction real quick. So you were talking about that. So during the Louisville and Miami game, there was a shot that panned up, and you know how like everybody puts their banners up and all. When I saw Louisville had one up for making the Belk Bowl, and I was like, damn, the standards really are different at some places than others.
You know what I think? I think the Belk Bowl gives you a banner, and you're like, well, you might as well put it up. I mean,
like, okay.
Yeah. For making it or winning it?
For winning it.
Winning it, yeah. I don't know. Like, Louisville, I mean, their football history is good but not great. I mean, they haven't done anything. So I get that. Especially you got to get people excited about it. If you're not excited about it, your fans aren't going to be excited about it. And sometimes, even if you are excited about it, you can't sell that to your fans. Because, especially if you look at last year's Louisville team, they were fantastic all year long, lost in the ACC title game, and then it's just kind of like, oh, man. Like you get that because you feel like you're right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't know. It depends on the program.
That's what I was like. I was sitting there, I was like, dang, the standards are different.
Well, look, here's the thing. If you're LSU and you wind up in the Belk Bowl or something like that, and you have the banner, you're like, hey, put this underneath. Like, put this where people can walk
just
through.
Bury this.
People can see it. Maybe we get one of the best players to sign it. Look, Malik Neighbors signed that. There you go. You have a thing. But you don't put it up there with, 3-time national champion.
No.
There. So, anywho, getting to it, the moment you've all been waiting for, Texas and Georgia. I've seen a lot of people say that Texas isn't ready for the SEC and all that. I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a fair assessment. What I would say, I don't think Oklahoma's
not
roster built for the SEC. I think Texas is roster built for the SEC and all that. But the fans have to get used to this is what the SEC is. This is what college football is, and the SEC is just the loudest and brightest example of it. But look, Georgia's not worried about these kind of things.
No.
They might lose every now and again, pretty much just to Alabama. And, that's who's got their number. No one else has their number. Anybody has their number. Georgia's the best team for the last 5 years. It's Georgia. Like, they're the team that's the guy right now.
Yep.
And I thought that's the stat was wild that Texas has only played, that was only like the 4th top 5 matchup at DKR. But if you take out all the great Oklahoma matchups, and then Arkansas in the 70s, how many times would there have been a top 5 matchup at Darrell K. Royal? Really, like, A&M's never lived in the top 5. None of the other Southwest Conference or Big 12 teams, really did it. I mean, Nebraska Nebraska did it at the beginning, Kansas State a couple times, but did those actually intersect at the time where both teams were top 5? That's pretty rare. Georgia's been in a lot of those.
Yep.
Recently. Because of them being in the SEC as top 5, top 10 matchups, as where Texas maybe hasn't. So I think that the atmosphere in Austin, as crazy and rowdy as it was, did not affect Georgia at all. Now, neither quarterback in the game, Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck, did anything to really impress me. Not a great game for either of them, but they were also playing against two of the best defenses in the country. So I'll give them a slight benefit of the doubt on that. Sometimes the defenses are better. Texas has the number one defense in the country. And it's for that reason that I think it was only 30-15 and not 45-15, because their defense made plays and kept them reasonably in that game, especially once they made the plays in the second half to score and get back in it. Like once the offense got going a little bit. But it was a fun game to watch. I think Texas got their first dose of reality of what it's like to be an SEC team, that week in and week out, because they're barely even into their SEC schedule. Like week in and week out, it's tough.
But also, how many times in the Big 12 did Texas play a game even remotely close to that caliber of opponent after playing Oklahoma?
Oh, no, never.
Never.
I mean,
that's not something you see. So, and that's not an excuse, but that's the reality of the situation. Like, you're going to get more of that back to back to back. Also think that was a factor. You put a lot of hype and emotion, all of that into a rivalry. And I know you went out there and beat the hell out of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma sucks, but at the same time, like, that's a lot of energy that goes into that, and that's something that was new to them. Well, those people haven't had to follow that type of game up with that caliber of opponent. I think Texas is still really good. I think they're one of the best teams in the country. I think they're going to be just fine. But I think that was something that played into it, and that's more of the reality that those two are facing. Like, that South Carolina team Oklahoma faced. South Carolina's really good. Like, if Lenore Sellers doesn't throw the game away a couple of times, like against LSU and Bama, South Carolina is one of the better teams in the country. So, like, I think that's more of a reality and gut check to both of those programs. Texas is definitely built better for it right now, but their crowd and everything, that atmosphere, that was definitely SEC ready.
Yeah. So, Jack, you're right. It's on Texas for a bunch of years. Like, that they didn't, like, there were top 5 teams in the Big 12 and Texas wasn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're right.
No, that's a fact, bro.
No. But, like, no, so, like, they're, but also, I mean, the SEC, sometimes these top 5 versus top 5 matchups don't wind up being that later in the year.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about rankings and how kind of silly they are, right? Like they're top 5 versus top 5, but then, you're top 5 for 6 weeks and then you lose 4 games. So, like, were you ever really a top 5 team, or are you just better than the first 6 teams?
Look at the Bama-Mizzou game, right? Like, neither one of those teams were really top 10 teams. I know it's not top 5, but it's the same kind of thing. Neither one of them were really top 10 teams when they played each other. It's the same thing.
Yeah. It absolutely is. So, yeah, it's crazy that never happened. But the big moment in that game, Garrett, was the controversy about
terrible call.
It was a bad call.
Terrible call.
But also,
you can't change it.
You can't change
it.
You
cannot change that call.
You can't change it in the circumstance that they changed it in.
No.
Had they made the call, then come back and then said, like, no, we're going to waive it off. Okay. But you make the call, garbage gets thrown to the field, and then you change it. Whether the garbage on the field had anything to do with it, what that officiating crew was, there's a large portion of the population who, no matter what anybody says, will always believe that call was changed because of the fans reacting the way that they did. And at least for the rest of that game, you set up a situation where what happens if Texas gets really back in it and you make another call and they do it again? Now they expect you to overturn it because it worked.
Right.
Because there's a bunch of idiots up there that think that they did something. Like, you have played into the idiocy of the moment.
Yep.
And when they changed the call, even though it was bad, they created a situation that I think is untenable, in that now, whether the fans doing that affected them or not, how can you convince somebody who has already been convinced that, if you're a Georgia fan, if you're a fan who doesn't like Texas, if you're all that, you'd be like, well, they only did that because Texas's fans threw a fit. Well, that I can't, like, I couldn't convince anybody of that.
Well, there's no way you can, because if that doesn't happen, then the officials don't meet for as long as they did, and then that doesn't happen. The game would go on. Like, they would have, and also if it would have been an interception, like, it just would have been a PI call. I don't think that it would have unfolded like that as well. I think having it be an interception definitely played into it. It was a terrible call. And another thing, I don't like the ejection parts with these targets. Like Georgia had 2 players that were ejected for like these questionable targeting calls. And while I know they are at the same time, but like that's another thing that's got to be fixed, because I don't like players being put out of games and multiple games for that. But yeah, it was that call there was interesting. It was a terrible one. The fans reacted piss poor. Like they should be. That was pathetic.
Well, look, for all the dogging I give Texas over the years, I will say this: they respond to controversy faster and maybe more effectively than anybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one back in the day that I think they probably learned their lesson on, the strength coach that was a problem. But since then, like, look, if you go back to Chris Beard, you go back, like, any time that they're faced with a PR crisis, they're like, no, here, this is what we're doing, as opposed to kind of letting the story get out of control. So they've threatened to suspend alcohol sales. The fans that have done that, they're going to identify them on video and ban them from events for the rest of the year. So they, pay the $250,000 fine, all that stuff. They're at least in a public relations sense out in front of it. And so, yes, I do admire that. Like, they didn't make light of anything. They didn't be like, hey, look, this happens all the time. This is a big deal. No, they took it head on. And, yeah, the call was bad in the first place. And college officiating, like, people can complain about NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. Like, I think officiating as a whole has suffered, and mostly it's because it starts
lower,
very lower. Like, there needs to be a national officiating group that's job is to recruit young officials, get them in JV and high school games, get them good at that, at their mechanics, and move them up the ladder and get them confident and understanding the rules and not afraid of the masses. Mm-hmm. The problem is now, because of the kind of society we live in,
people are psychos.
And be like, this referee called a holding and causes the game. His name's Jack McKenzie and he lives in Waco. And you're like, bro, just a holding call. Like, yeah. Didn't kidnap him or anything. Like, let's like deal with real crimes. And so that's why. So a lot of people don't want to do that, because you have to have a very thick skin to be an official. Mm-hmm. You really look. I have very little officiating experience, but I was an intramural ref for 3 years, and I can tell you, even in a low stakes bullshit like that,
yeah,
like you have to have really thick skin.
I imagine,
because people will come to you and you're like, God, dude, like, are you this like into this co-rec basketball game? Like, is this what's going to make it for you?
Yeah. This is your life?
Are they going to do a documentary on this where you sit back and go, well, the refs were all over us that day, but we came out on top, and we beat this, we of the Pimps 2002 beat the Skid Marks, in this game. You're like, I mean, who cares, right? And, the higher stakes it gets, the better it needs to be. We've seen a lot of complaining and like a lot of reform on the NFL side, and they still don't necessarily get it all right. In college, there needs to be accountability. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when you have a situation like this, it creates a further like schism between the refs and accountability, because now, like, yeah, okay, we don't want them to throw any water bottles at us.
Right.
Like, we're glad it's just water bottles and it was on the other end of the field. Then it started kind of from all angles, but mostly it was in that student section end zone there.
In a situation like that, though, like, do the refs, do they get fined or anything? Like, there's no repercussions whatsoever?
Yeah. See that. I mean, like we don't know. That's the other thing, is we don't know. So again, the public confidence is eroded in it, right? Mm. So we don't know these things. I know that in professional sports, where there's more money on the line, but still, I mean, there's a lot of money. But they still have to be accountable. Somebody, the head of the crew, has to go and talk to the pool reporter, explain why they made the calls. Mm. And then the league, like, you've seen the NFL, like, these officials are not going to get a postseason assignment. Right. They're not going to get this. Officiating needs to come under the banner of whatever the new governing body is, and it doesn't need to be conference by conference.
Yeah, that's another thing. It needs to be just everybody as whole.
Yeah, everybody is whole. And then the other thing is, if you do that, you can move people around a little bit more. And that way it's not, when you get the Tennessee-Alabama game that has, a million penalties in it as well, it's not both fan bases going, oh, it's this crew again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's this guy with his big muscles. Oh, it's Glasses McGinty here.
Mm-hmm.
Like all these things. Like you really...
You shouldn't know the officials.
You should know that, like, that's a big thing. Like, you should know. Basketball almost has it this way. But there are some officials that you know.
Oh, yeah.
Higgins is, like, the most famous one, right? Like, But the good thing about Higgins is he doesn't care.
No.
Like, he just keeps on blowing the whistle, calling fouls. I mean, that's so.
So this is, like,
but
totally.
Yeah, UT Parking says until they can be fined, there's zero accountability for better officiating. Yes,
there has to be something.
They have put too much cushion. And look, these guys deserve cushion. Referees deserve cushion. They need a cushion for human error. Mm-hmm. But they're not doing things to help them get better.
I also think, like, they're not a lot of the calls. They just do this because they can make up for it with a replay. Like they could just, you know what I'm saying? Like, replay makes up for so much error or whatever. And I think that's kind of played into this as well, knowing that you have a fallback and to make bad calls for. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Like, there needs to be a universal plan in place. The people need to be held accountable. If you're going to fight, and rightfully so, the Texas fans should be fine. Texas should be fine for what happened. But the officials should be as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And do you think that if you're Dr. Pepper, when do you start wanting to pull that Quinn Ewers commercial? Because he needs a backup.
Look, here's the problem with
I know. Go for it.
Here's the
I set it up for you. Go for it.
I sent you,
Yes, you did.
This text. I said watching a game and seeing a Quinn Ewers commercial that Malik Murphy is actually playing in, where he says he reached the playoff without a backup,
it's a lie.
Meta as hell, because that's not true. Like, I'll quote Mike Gundy. That's not true.
No.
It's not true.
I just kept seeing it. I was like, please pull this damn
commercial. He's been the starter
commercial.
for 3 years, and he's needed a backup in all three of them.
Every time.
All three. And that's not hit. I mean, look, he gets hurt. That was happening in football, but to do the commercial, I feel bad for, like, I genuinely do feel bad for Quinn because Dr. Pepper wrote this script and they thought it was funny and they just went with it.
Yeah.
But I'm betting, like, during that thing, he's like, yeah, but Malik was, like, you guys saw. I mean, we beat Kansas State with Malik. I wasn't there. I was like, I was in a sling.
Right.
You saw I was in the sling. I needed the backup for sure. No, I needed one. Yeah, absolutely. And then, like, that commercial was about Arch Manning, but it completely erases Malik Murphy.
Yes.
And then whoever the backup was 2 years ago when he first started, I've already forgotten.
Was that Hudson Card?
Maybe, yeah.
I think it was Hudson Card.
Hudson Card had to play.
Yeah.
Like, they've all had to play. So, no. And not, gotten to play because Texas won 55-10. They had to
play
because Quinn got hurt.
Yeah.
Come on, man. But if I were him, I would have been doing that, being like, like, none of this is true, right? They're like, oh, nobody will notice. And like, he's like, college football fans will notice.
Somebody's going to notice this.
Yeah. You put this on during a Duke game, and Malik Murphy's parents are at least going to be like, hey, wait a minute.
Yep.
Hey, hold on. I've got a question. There was a 3-game stretch last year where he had a broken collarbone. 4 games with a broken collarbone, right?
Yep.
3 games, I guess 3.5, right?
It was a minute, yeah.
Hurt his collarbone. Yeah. No. Not cool, Quinn.
Not.
But I do feel bad for him because that's what happened. They're like, oh, this is funny. And then, like, who's going to notice? Like,
everybody.
Well, I mean, everybody, the college football comedian podcast that, notices the minutia of these things. Yeah, we noticed. We know. Mm-hmm. We know. Yeah, I see that commercial, and yeah, it's funny. Had he played in all 12, 13 games last year, it would have made sense. Dead on.
Yeah.
But I'm not here for the Malik Murphy erasure.
No, not especially not after he did your team like that.
No. He didn't lose.
No.
Right? Or did he lose once?
Malik? I can't remember, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, he kept him in the playoff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They made it to the
they wouldn't have
playoff in
lost.
spite
Yeah,
of it, right?
no.
Yeah. No, he didn't lose. Who
They
did they
wouldn't have
lose
lost.
to? Who did Texas lose to last year?
I don't remember.
Other than Washington.
Oklahoma?
Yes.
Yes, it was Oklahoma.
And Malik didn't play in that game. Quinn did. See? Almost lost to Houston, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Almost lost to Kansas State,
but they didn't, yeah.
Almost isn't lost. Yeah. So yeah. Barrett Crawford said Ewers being alongside the Boz is fitting. Yeah, I do think it's funny that Brian Bosworth is the star of all these commercials, and had they just done this back in the 80s, it would have been perfect for him.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no. I still, yeah. And the joke, yes, Paxton, the joke is for Arch. That's what it's about. Know. But before he says that, he goes, I made it to the playoff without a backup last year. That's not what happened, though.
Yes.
That's, I'm just here for the facts. That's what I'm here. I'm here to make sure that you get factual information.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, exactly. I'm here for facts. But look, Texas and Georgia, in spite of the fact that it wasn't necessarily close, I was very entertained by it all.
Right. No, it was a good game.
Carson Beck, 3 interceptions. He was. I'm not trying to dog him too much, but he was kind of like the de facto number 1 quarterback. But if I had to rank him, like I saw that Mel Kiper had them Carson Beck 5th and Quinn Ewers 6th, which is about where I'd put those guys. Because if you're asking me who the best guys are this season, it's Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, who again not a draftable guy at 5'9",
right?
Or at least not high. But those guys have all played better than I think Beck has for sure, and Ewers the other night for sure, and he just barely kind of into the season for Quinn. I still think he's an NFL prospect, no doubt. But there are guys, if I am in the NFL draft this season and you're asking me, do I want Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward or heck, I think he'll be back next year, but even Garrett Nussmeier, to me.
I think he's going to the draft.
I mean, look, if they keep winning, he's probably going to the draft.
I think he's going to the draft.
Like if they wind up in the playoff, he's probably going to the draft.
Yeah.
But like even Garrett Nussmeier to me has been more. I've enjoyed. Like I thought he's played better.
He's had less to work with.
Yeah.
Less talent. There's because everybody's been hurt outside of Kyron Lacey.
Yeah. So I mean, look, that C.J. Daniels that they got from Liberty was supposed to be a big thing.
He hasn't played all year.
Yeah, he hasn't played all year. That was supposed to be the guy who's supposed to take it off of Kyron Lacey. And Mason Taylor's been great too. But I like those 3 better right now today as it stands. And there's probably some others if I really like dug down and thought of it to pick out before them that I think are maybe a little better equipped. Like I would say that too. Look, I'll tell you, Drew Allers played better.
Yeah, he has
overall so far this year, and Georgia keeps winning. And look, Georgia won 2 titles with Stetson Bennett, so it's not like when you have all of that around you. And I can list Oklahoma won a national title with Josh Heupel.
Yeah.
Miami won a national title with Quinn Ewers. Ohio State won with Craig Krenzel. So it's not. Alabama won with Brody Croyle, right? So you're Jacob Coker, A.J. McCarron. Like it's not – you have to be at the pinnacle of college quarterbacking, but just because you're a great NFL quarterback doesn't mean you're going to be you did much in college. Matthew Stafford can never get over the hump, right?
Right.
But he's been a really good, fantastic pro, so it's different. But Quinn said the injury is still bothering him post-game. If that's the case, you should be on the bench. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, he should.
Yeah, let it heal. I get that you don't want when Arch Manning is there and he's as good as he is, the fear of getting Wally pipped is gonna be there.
Right.
But
I also think that's one where if they let Arch play and Quinn got healthy, we saw it with the Oklahoma game. They're going to put Quinn back out there, right? I don't think necessarily that Arch would steal that job. I think they want to try to maintain Arch to be as healthy as he possibly can to ride him out into the future. And while you have Quinn available, he's a high caliber enough quarterback. You're going to play him if he's healthy. I don't think that Arch is going to necessarily come in and take the job over unless Quinn continues to struggle, because he hasn't been great. Like, I mean, he's looked average at best for the most part, but I don't think that Texas necessarily or Sark wants to necessarily put Arch in there and just let him ride. I don't think that's the case. I have a question for you.
Okay.
So with USC's embarrassing loss to Maryland this weekend, and Oklahoma's loss to South Carolina, which one of these programs bit off more than they can chew, and who do you see being able to turn it around first?
USC. I think they can still get talent out there. That is the most confounding thing, because I don't really know what's wrong with USC all that much. I mean, Miller Moss is good. They've got, good running backs. They've got good wide receivers. The defense is playing better.
Is it just coaching? Like Lincoln
they're
Riley
just not very good in the moment. Now, look, the defense was not fantastic against Maryland, particularly in the second half. But
Maryland's not good.
No, they're not. So, yeah, I thought after that LSU game, and I think they probably mustered up all their strength for the LSU game.
Yeah, that was
got
one.
them. They made and of course there was one of the craziest catches ever made in that one.
Yeah.
Usually when you see stuff like that happen, the team that makes that once in a lifetime play wins. Mm-hmm. David Tyree.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose it. When you catch a ball like this, you're not going to lose that. When the wide receiver, whose name I forget right now for USC, jumped up and caught the ball like Spider-Man, you're not going to lose that game. Mm-hmm. Things are going, things have turned that way normally. I will say this: the Odell Beckham catch that everybody
the one against Canales,
they did lose that game. But it was still a sick
awesome
catch. But they did lose that game. But that's my outlier.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. That's a USC can still doesn't have a talent issue. I think they have a functionality issue, which I think Lincoln Riley needs to get under control. And also Lincoln Riley might have been figured out a little bit. He might need to, change some things up. I wonder how much his heart's in it as much as it was when he first started, because the game has changed. And I do think that he was thinking about the NFL a little bit, and he still might. And I think if Cliff Kingsbury can get an NFL job off of getting fired at Texas Tech, then so can Lincoln Riley having a mediocre year at USC.
No, I agree with that.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see Lincoln maybe throw his name in the ring for an NFL job and see where that goes. I don't know. There's been a lot of stuff since he's been out there that just didn't seem characteristic to who he was in his early going at Oklahoma. And I think Brent Venables is going to be feeling a lot of pressure.
Oh, he is.
Because they have no talent on offense.
No.
And that's not Oklahoma.
Well, I mean, I think they have
here's
talent.
The other thing. Yeah. Now, did OU get caught a little bit off guard when Lincoln Riley left and went to USC? Yes. But the reason that Texas was set up to do it is because Chris Del Conte went out and he hired Steve Sarkisian. And when they were hiring him and they hired him, he said, okay, you've been in the SEC. What's the difference between the Big 12 teams that we see and the SEC teams that we see? And Steve Sarkisian said, we have to get bigger. We have to do this. And Brent Venables came in, and he had the same directive, and clearly he hasn't done that. Now, look, they lost a lot of guys in the transfer portal at once, but you're Oklahoma. Whatever they did to offset that was wrong from the start, and they haven't really regained it.
Mm. Well, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that's what confuses me, because I don't necessarily think Oklahoma's offense isn't talented. I think Taylor Tatum is going to be a stud at running back. I think you have the Jackson Arnold situation is still kind of baffling, though. That's the one that I'll kind of give him a pass on that. I think he just hasn't lived up to it. But But you have no receivers. Your whole receiver core has been depleted, so you have nobody to really throw the ball to. I think it's just kind of been a weird circumstance. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of talent for Oklahoma. I just think that you're in a unique spot there where you were spoiled so long with such high-caliber Heisman quarterbacks that you're naturally going to regress there, kind of like we're seeing with Bama regressing from a coaching standpoint when you have, like, elite talent up there. Elite coaching with Saban, but I don't necessarily think it's a talent thing. I think there's just something off there. And while Seth Luttrell might be a scapegoat, I don't think it's going to get any better throughout the season for them, but they're going to have to figure it out. Maybe you try to get – I don't know how you fix it, but I'm not sure that – I think it's more so coaching and development on the offensive side of the ball than it is talent from – that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, Garrett. That is a great question. Well, today on The Big Show, we've got Ari Temkin. We have Mark Shipper from Fifth Down College Football, John Kurtz, JJ Joe, and the legendary Phil Bennett, plus the Big 12 North Pod and my top 5. That's all coming up at 2 o'clock. We will see you then. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.